This podcast is part of Mishmash Media. Hey folks.
Hey, how's it going?
Very good. Welcome to the premiere episode of Season 3 of Curbcast, our bonus podcast where myself, Ivan.
And I'm Stephen.
We get Curb Your Enthusiasm episodes and we review them in chronological order, very different to our usual podcast or our main one, Bidwabask. So today we're doing Chet's shirt from Season 3. Actually a pretty funny one, Steve.
Yeah, I didn't mind this episode. Strong start to the season. And for now, this podcast is only available on Patreon, so you're probably one of the few people listening to it. But if you know anyone who you think might want to listen to this podcast, let them know, and you can point them in the direction of the Patreon, and for a couple of bucks a month, they can subscribe and get access to Season 3 of Curbcast and future episodes of Curbcast.
That's correct, yes. So you got plenty to look forward to.
Indeed. All right, let's kick it off. Like Ivan said, first episode of Season 3. It's nice to be back doing Curbcast. It's been a little while, about 4 or 5 months, I think. And this one is called Chet's Shirt.
Yes. So this episode aired in the US on the 15th of September 2002 on HBO. In this episode, while comforting a friend whose husband passed away, Larry and Cheryl comment on the husband's shirt. Larry then goes to the department store the next day to buy it. Meanwhile, Jeff talks Larry into investing in a trendy new celebrity restaurant. Larry also gets into trouble when he throws away some trash in a random garbage can, and that neighbor's pretty angry.
Yeah, people get really, really territorial about their bins, and I'm on Larry's side in this. He said, well, there's space in the bin and it's just rubbish, so why are you being so narky about it? But some people get very, very protective over empty space in a bin. Yeah,
I've had a bad experience once before. Like, I was walking and I was actually very similar. I think I was eating an apple, actually, just like Larry. And then what happened was I put it in the bin, and then like the guy yelled out to me, and he was like, hey, what are you doing? Yeah, but he didn't want to go kick my ass. Like, he was just like, what are you doing? This is my bin, mate. And I was like, oh, sorry.
I understand.
And he goes, don't do it again.
I can understand getting annoyed if you constantly run out of space in your bin because other people are using it. Fair enough. But if your bin is never full and there's enough room for an apple core or something small, I don't understand being territorial over what is literally just empty space.
Well, he was pretty cool about it later on. Like, he wasn't violent. He didn't want to beat me up, but he just said, don't do it again.
Yeah, so. Even that, I know that's not as severe as this guy's reaction in this episode, but even that, it's just something that I just don't understand. But everyone's got their weird things that they become obsessed over or want to claim. So bins for some people.
I pay my rates, so that's my bin.
Yeah, I'm paying for that empty space that nothing is occupying.
Yeah, through my taxes. That's it. Anyway, should we jump into the episode, my friend?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, scene 1. Jeff and Larry are walking down the street when Jeff says that he's giving up red meat for no reason. He's trying to convince Larry to invest in a restaurant that Ted Danson has a stake in. Larry throws out his half-eaten apple into a neighbor's trash can, just like my experience many years ago. The neighbor confronts Larry about this. He threatens to kick the ass of the next person who throws trash in his bin, and Larry and Jeff walk off nervously. So yeah, the neighbor's really aggressive guy.
Yeah, like we were just saying, a bit of an overreaction as far as I'm concerned. But I did like how Larry, he was a bit nervous, as you said, and he was a bit confused as to why this guy was being so aggressive. But the fact that he didn't take it out of the bin, I think a lot of people would go, oh, I'm really sorry, and retrieve the apple core from the bin. The fact that, although he felt threatened, he didn't feel so threatened that he needed to undo what pissed this guy off. I respect that. He said, well, I'm not a fan of how you're reacting, but I don't care enough to take it from the bin.
Yeah, I would have thought that maybe the neighbor would have made him do it, but I think he was probably, because the neighbor was getting angry at him, from his house. He didn't confront them in person. Or maybe he thought that, because Jeff was there, they might both, kick his ass, even though Larry's a scrawny. He wouldn't be a good fighter. He's a bit scrawny. And Jeff probably is a bit of a softie.
Yeah, and look, he's probably just angry in general. I don't think he's angry specifically about the bin. And he seems like he's all bark and not much bite, because he doesn't even threaten them directly. He says the next person who does it, I'm going to kick their ass. So I think he's just ranting about something. He's probably upset about something that's not even related to the bin, and he saw that and he got pissed off about it. But Yeah, not enough to make Larry retrieve the apple core from the bin. And
Larry doesn't care.
No. He's confused, and like you said, they walk off a bit concerned. But not enough to make them get the apple core out. I did think that the episode, because I think we've mentioned this before, but neither you and I have seen any Curb Your Enthusiasm episodes past season 2. So every episode we watch and talk about is new to us, which is exciting because first 2 seasons it was just me, and you'd already seen them. So it's good that we're both on the same page in that regard. And I honestly thought that the bin guy and the apple core would be the main storyline through the episode. So I was waiting for the payoff, and, it doesn't happen until the very end, which we'll talk about a bit later on. But it's sort of a bit of a misdirect. Usually the opening scene sets up whatever the storyline will be, whatever problem Larry is going to cause. But it doesn't really in this episode. It's something entirely different. So that was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, we forgot to mention that this is our first time watching season 3 episodes. So yeah, like Stephen said, anything from here on in is fresh to both of us. But yeah, no, I'm pretty surprised too, because from what we've seen in seasons 1 and 2, it usually is like the first or maybe second scene that establishes basically the entire plot of the episode. But yeah, you're right. It was kind of was a misdirection, and I think probably maybe because the shirt was probably funnier. There was more, depth, and they could have gone different ways with the shirt and Chet and, the grieving wife Barbara and all that.
Yeah, I mean, a shirt and Ted Danson, and we'll obviously elaborate on that as we go on, is far more interesting, and there's more comedy to mine than an angry guy about an apple core in a bin.
Yeah,
much funnier and much more interesting. But again, it surprised me that they didn't even touch on it at all, even as a secondary or a third storyline. And obviously it comes back in the end. But I enjoyed it, but yeah, unexpected.
Because I think in later episodes, Ted Danson's kind of like Larry's sort of enemy. He's got a bit of like a Richard Lewis kind of relationship with him. So maybe they were trying to establish Ted Danson as like, Larry's semi-adversary, like they're friends. But if there's ever like a competition or something that they're gonna, fight for, they'll fight each other for it.
Yeah, I think the term is frenemy.
Frenemy, yeah.
They're not Jerry Seinfeld and Newman. They're not sworn enemies, but yeah, there's a bit of tension there, and they don't really like each other, but they don't hate each other. It's somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, I'm unaware of what happens to the rest of the season, but I assume that maybe the restaurant investment is probably like a running theme of the season. Yeah. So they probably just wanted to establish that. So it makes sense that they decided to do that instead of the apple.
Yeah, the restaurant doesn't really pay off in this episode. It doesn't really have a resolution. So yeah, I agree that it's probably each season 1 and season 2, there's been an overarching storyline that kind of pops up from time to time to link it all together. And a restaurant being invested into by a bunch of celebrities is complex enough, and there's enough potential comedy there and complications that Larry causes to keep that going throughout all of season 3. And, we'll find out.
Yeah, we will, definitely. Larry meets with widow Barbara to pick up Cheryl at her house because Cheryl is consoling her. They talk about getting a picture framed that they bought off her after her husband's death. So her husband's name's Chet, hence the name of the episode, Chet's shirt. Larry looks at the picture and comments on Chet's, it appears to be like a cream and black long sleeve bowling shirt. Is that what you'd say it is?
Yeah, it's kind of like a silk. It looked like silk because it was quite flimsy and wavy. It reminded me of the sort of shirts that Tony Soprano would wear. He wears this sort of style, but usually short sleeve, and it's quite loose and like wavy. So I think it's like a silk, just like a nice cream and black or dark brown. I couldn't tell. Yeah, long sleeve kind of baggy shirt. It is a nice shirt. I mean, I wouldn't wear it because it's not really my style, but
No.
I understand why Larry was impressed by it. It's a very striking shirt.
Yeah, very early 2000s shirt, much like The Sopranos when Tony wearing it, yeah. And Larry asked Barbara where he got it, so when he was alive, her husband, and Barbara's got no idea, and Larry's pretty keen to look for the shirt.
Boy, I love this shirt.
Isn't that a great picture?
Oh.
That is exactly the kind of shirt that I would wear, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Did you take that here?
Yeah, it was just right in the backyard.
Really?
I mean, doesn't he look healthy, Larry?
You know where he got this?
I don't remember.
No idea?
I don't remember. I love that picture.
I wish I could
I
remember
know.
where I saw.
It's nice.
Could it have been the mall or the promenade?
So the next day, Larry is wearing his new shirt, the same one. And Jeff, he also heads to the under construction restaurant called Bobo's. They meet up with Ted and the other investors, Ted Danson, I mean. Ted reminds them of his daughter Jill's Wizard of Oz themed birthday party coming up. Larry wants to dress as the Lime. Jeff relents and decides to dress as Tin Man. They sit around a table to see if Larry wants to invest in the business. And Larry jokes that he won't invest if they sell kebabs for the fear of sticks. nice little Larryism there.
Yeah, his ideas for the uniform and what the restaurant should be are a bit weird, and people aren't unreceptive to them, but no one is super keen. Everyone's like, it's a bit odd, Larry. Before we get into this scene a bit more, I just wanted to touch on the previous scene when they go to the widow's, sorry, what was her name again?
Barbara.
Barbara, yeah. I think this sets up nicely. It brings us right back into Curb World where Larry's just constantly going around being insensitive and causing trouble and, making people upset emotionally. The fact that he's so, disconnected from the emotional reality of other people, and he's really, really grilling Barbara about where the shirt came from. And obviously it's a pretty upsetting topic for her because her husband only passed away 4 or 5 months ago, and they're kind of pushing her to get the frame done. And she's like, I haven't been in a good headspace to do the frame. And Larry's he's either oblivious or he just doesn't care. He's just so focused on what he wants out of the situation. And I think that, it brings us, not that you would ever forget about Larry David's insensitivities and who he is as a person, but it's a nice way to establish, to remind us, this is who he is and this is the tone of the entire episode, and it brings you right back into Curb Your Enthusiasm. And I think they did it well.
They did, and it shows that Larry cares more about the shirt than Barbara's grief.
Yeah, I mean, caring more about a picture frame and a random shirt than your wife's friends or your friend's grief over their recently lost husband is perfect Larry David. So I think they did a nice job, and it wasn't too over the top. It wasn't so insensitive that you were shocked. It was a nice, gentle re-entry into Larry David's
cynicism,
narcissism, and cynicism. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But just going back to the scene that we're talking about in the restaurant, so you're right. There's a bit of an indifference to some investors regarding the sticks and the kebabs, and he makes another suggestion that every table needs to have a bell so they can get the waiter's attention, and every bell should have a different tone, so each waiter knows who's being called.
Yeah, I like that idea in theory. Like, just, as hearing it, I'm like, well, that's not a terrible idea. Like, it would work, but in practice, it would be so terrible and so annoying. And even if you're a waiter getting paid and that the restaurant you're working at has bells, it would still feel so degrading being like summoned over via bell. You would feel like a servant, like what you're getting yourself into and you would accept it, but it would still feel very degrading. And, the idea is interesting, but it just would not work in practice.
Don't think so, no.
No.
And Larry, he's not happy with the waiters' uniforms that the investors have picked out, so he decides to take initiative and go out and find what uniform to pick. In the next scene, he tells Cheryl that they may invest in the restaurant, and she's not happy about it. He tries to convince her of the benefits of owning the restaurant, including talking to strangers, because Cheryl's like, you don't like talking to the people you know. And then Larry says, well, I don't like talking to people I know, but I like talking to strangers. Very weird logic.
Well, I can kind of understand that from, like, if I put myself in Larry's mind, I can kind of understand that because he has nothing to lose if he upsets a stranger. There's no stakes. He doesn't care. There's no ramifications. Usually what gets him in trouble is saying or doing the wrong thing to someone he knows, even if it's someone he knows sort of distantly. Like the Apple guy, he didn't know him from a bar of soap and he didn't really care. But if the Apple guy had some connection to him, even indirectly, it would come back to bite him in the bum. So I think at this stage, he realizes that even if I know this person vaguely, it's easier to be who I am to people that I have absolutely no connection to. So from Larry's weird logic for us because we're normal, but for a humanoid, alien like Larry, at least socially speaking, the logic does stack up, I think.
Well, imagine if Barbara was the one with the rubbish bin and she wasn't happy with Larry's Apple core. Yeah, maybe he'd really take it to heart.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Even if he had some tenuous connection to the bin guy, I think he would have reacted differently because I think he would have seen, well, if I treat this guy like shit or if I sort of dismiss this guy and I know him through someone else or, whatever, it will come back to bite me in the bum. But the fact that he knew nothing of him, I think, made him go, yeah, whatever, and just walk away.
Yeah, he was like, I'm done with you.
Yeah.
Who cares?
So yeah, it fits Larry David's logic. I wanted to ask you, it's not obvious, it just occurred to me as I was watching the episode. Do you think that this restaurant, being talked about and, a bunch of celebrity investors talking about getting it off the ground, it feels to me like a subtle dig at Planet Hollywood, which was big in the 90s and a bit of a flop. Around this time, I think is when Planet Hollywood truly died. I don't know. I have no evidence to back this up, but I wouldn't be surprised if whoever wrote, that idea into the script was at least partially inspired by Planet Hollywood being a restaurant more famous for who owned it rather than the restaurant itself. And, it seems like a bad idea in Curb Your Enthusiasm, obviously because Larry's in the mix and he's going to fuck it up. But just a bunch of celebrities investing, thinking that the restaurant will be a success just because it's invested into by celebrities. I don't know. For me, it just reminded me of a subtle dig at Planet Hollywood and what a flop that was.
I guess you could say that. I mean, it was around that time, like, in the 90s and the 2000s, especially with Planet Hollywood. I think there were a lot of, celebrity-owned restaurants. It was kind of like a thing, like a trend. for that period of time. So I think it was just like, Larry David, he's the writer of or the creator of Seinfeld. And then Ted Danson, by that stage, he was in Cheers and, Becker and, some other big things he'd go on to. And probably because they were both like A-list in the celebrity world. Yeah, that maybe they thought it was a good idea to invest. But I feel like because with Planet Hollywood, Stallone, Willis and Schwarzenegger that invested, the three of them?
I think they were the three main investors and sort of the public face. But I think there were other investors as well. But they were the three main ones.
Yeah, because I feel like with Planet Hollywood, like those three guys, they were the face of Planet Hollywood. Whereas I feel like with Bobo's, I get what you mean, like with the celebrity investing, but I feel like Larry and Ted probably didn't want to be the faces. It was probably going to be like quiet investments. They were going to be like silent investors. So like you won't see, like they won't do ads with Ted and Larry in them to get people to come to the restaurant. But if you look at their financial records, you might see Larry and Ted's, stakes in there. So it was probably more of like they wanted to maybe go behind the scenes and just do everything, behind the scenes.
Yeah, maybe in Curb Your Enthusiasm universe, they, figured out what went wrong with Planet Hollywood and they're like, we're going to be a celebrity restaurant that doesn't make the same mistakes.
Yeah, we're not going to put our face on it.
Because it's such a unique phenomenon that was so prevalent in the 90s, a bunch of celebrities investing into a restaurant. I couldn't not make that link, even though it's not strong. It just reminded me of it. So I thought maybe it's inspired by it, or maybe they're having a very subtle dig at it. Maybe it will unfold throughout season 3. We'll find out. Maybe it will be a failure. I'm sure, they'll run into some complications with Larry being involved. It certainly won't be smooth sailing, but it's interesting storyline.
It's certainly of its time.
Yeah, for sure.
And anyway, in that scene, like I mentioned, Cheryl, she's surprised that Larry brought the same shirt as Chet, and she's very impressed by it. She likes it on him.
She's surprised just that he went shopping, let alone bought the shirt.
Well, it's not the first time he's gone shopping. He went with Mary in season 1.
That's true, but that was more to hang out with Mary than to shop for anything. That was an excuse.
That's true. That's very true, yes. With this kind of pseudo, emotional affair.
Yeah, that was, I forgot about that. And I'm sure Mary Steenburgen and Larry's emotional affair will come back into play in this season, her being Ted's wife.
Yeah, well, we have no idea what happens. We haven't looked at the next few episodes, so it's all a surprise for us from here on in.
No, I'm like I said, I'm just assuming. I wouldn't be surprised.
Of course,
if it comes back into it.
Well, we shall see. She also says that Barbara will have the frame ready soon, and that they're having dinner at his Larry's dentist's place, and Larry doesn't want to do it as he feels that he may be pressured for the dentist or to invite the dentist over for dinner. So he says, "Tell him that we're going to go to the country."
Yeah, and I like his sort of finishing line in this scene when he walks upstairs. It's like everyone needs to get together. Everyone's trying to get together. Everyone wants to get together. He's complaining about the fact that people overcommit to socializing. What's the point of socializing with your dentist? I don't get it. Your dentist looks at your teeth. You pay him to look at your teeth. And that's it. Anything beyond that is unnecessary. Just classic Larry.
Classic Larry, indeed. In the next scene at Caruso's, the clothing store, Larry and Jeff are picking out what uniforms the waiters should have. After going through different designs that they don't like, Larry decides to get a bowling shirt for Ted and another one for himself, the same one that Larry is still wearing. They spot a pair of ladies trying out military-style shirts, and they think that maybe that'll be a good waiter's uniform. The store manager mistakes Larry for someone else before revealing that his name is Bert and that he is a client of Larry's dentist, the one that Larry's trying to avoid.
Yep.
And he tells Larry that he's going to go see the dentist during the week. Oh, my God. Yeah. So in this moment, something's going to come up. The dentist is going to find out that Larry ghosted him.
Yeah, no, that is a common plot point that they rely upon a lot in Curb Your Enthusiasm, where Larry makes a lie up about why he can't do a thing, and then he runs into someone who knows the person that he's lied to, and then it comes back to bite him in the bum. So, I'm not saying that Curb Your Enthusiasm is predictable already, but it's something that will pan out and work out poorly for Larry. It's something they've done a lot of, and you can see that happening.
Yeah, well, we're already 21 episodes or 20 and a half episodes into Curb, and that's a similar kind of formula that they did in the last 2 seasons. So you can definitely, like, as us experiencing the show essentially almost for the first time, we can see that Larry, that is going to be set up for Larry.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't mean to say that it's already predictable or that it's boring or that it's uninspired, because how it works out poorly for Larry can be a plethora of things. It can work out badly in many ways, but you can kind of see it happening. You get a sense of what's going to come.
Yeah, for sure. And Bert says that he'll say hello to the dentist for Larry, and Larry says, "Oh, don't do that. Don't say hello when they see each other again." And
and Larry seems a tiny bit more self-aware. He's already like, "Oh no, if if he says hello to the dentist, then the dentist will know that I made up why I couldn't come over for dinner. So he's like the cogs are turning a bit for him already, which is a slight bit of character evolution, I think. In previous seasons, he hasn't had the forethought to go, oh, hang on, if the person that I'm lying to runs into this person that I've just run into, it's a tiny bit of evolution. And whether it's deliberate or not, I think it's a nice touch.
Yeah. Well, obviously he really wants to avoid the dentist, and he knows that there'll be some complications. And anyway, he gets the last 2 shirts from Caruso's, the bowling shirts, in stock. So good for him. So he wants to keep one for himself and give one to Ted.
One last thought I had about this scene. I was, I'm talking a lot about what I thought was going to happen as I was watching this episode. And what I thought was going to happen was, Larry said, I really want those last 2 shirts. The manager goes off and gets them and comes back. And I thought that the manager would go, oh, sorry, I don't have them, or some other guy bought them. I thought that was going to be the rest of the episode, that, Larry's upset that he couldn't get the shirts when he was told that they were there. But, the fact that he comes back and he's like, yep, I've got you 2 shirts. And Larry goes, cool, I'll take them, was, again, a bit of not a misdirect, but it was not how I expected that scene to go.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, I think it would have gone that way if maybe Ted asked him to buy a shirt like that. Yeah. I mean, if Ted said, I really like the shirt you're wearing, you're going to the store, would you mind picking up one? I think if they went down that route, they might have gone that way. And, there's only one in stock, and then Larry has one for himself, and then he decides to keep a second one, and then Ted would be like, why are you keeping a second one? You've already got one. Give me one. I wanted that shirt. And then there'd be the argument. So I guess they could have gone either way, depending on Ted's intention, but this was supposed to be a gift. So yeah, I see what you mean. They could have probably gone that way if they changed the subplot for Ted a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
At Bobo's, the investors mock the military shirt that Larry shows them, while Jeff shows off a shirt and vest that they all like. All that effort that Larry's gone into, and he wanted to take over and, be responsible, and then Jeff pulls out this shirt that he liked and then vest, and they liked his idea rather than Larry's. So Larry's a bit deflated.
When Jeff pulls out the vest, you could say that he is the main investor.
See my vest, see my vest, see my vest.
Made from real gorilla chest.
Loafers made from gophers. Yes.
See this hat? Was my cat.
I love how everything goes back to The Simpsons.
Yeah, of
so
course.
good.
All roads lead to The Simpsons.
Indeed.
And any road
to the yellow brick road.
Yeah, any road that doesn't is just a dead end with a cliff at the end.
That's right, yes. A real cliffhanger. Larry gives Ted the bowling shirt before noticing a tear under the inside of the collar. Larry tells Ted to return it, but Ted insists that Larry take it back. And he's like, why are you giving me a defective shirt? He's really questioning Larry. Ted says when someone is given a gift, then it should be intact. There shouldn't be any defects. And he doesn't have time to go out and do stuff. It's like, if I bought a gift in Seattle, if you bought me a gift from Seattle, would you expect me to go all the way to Seattle to go get it? I mean, that's unreasonable. I don't have time.
Yeah. One thing I always like asking you, and, you being you, Ivan, and you, our listeners, a lot of Curb Your Enthusiasm comedy is social faux pas, or what is the correct thing to do in weird little social situations. And there's the normal way, and then there's the Larry way. And which side do you take? And in this circumstance, I am on Larry's side, to be honest. The fact, as soon as he gives it as a gift, he didn't know it was defective. He did something very nice for Ted. And Ted wasn't overly rude about it. He was, he was very thankful for the gift, and he wasn't super, super, super rude to Larry. But I think if I had to be the judge of this situation, who is the person that's obligated to return the shirt, I probably would pick Larry's side, because he didn't know it was defective. He gave him a nice gift, and as soon as he's given the gift and it's accepted, it's his. Even if it just happened, it's kind of, I think it's his responsibility. What do you think?
Well, Ted should have taken notes and regifted it to someone else.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, no, I feel like maybe it's probably Larry's fault, but I think Ted's frustration probably leads back to his wife. I think he's probably still a bit filthy that, Larry made moves on Mary emotionally, so maybe he still has that in his subconscious. So, I mean, if that didn't happen, Ted would probably be a bit more, reasonable and, understanding and stuff, but obviously that wouldn't be so funny, would it? It's actually funnier, with this kind of conflict. So, there's probably some emotions there.
Yeah, no, that's true. If this was the first time that they'd interacted and there was no history yet, Ted probably would have been a bit more gracious, because he seems like a very nice man, in real life and in the show. So, but yeah, you're right. I think Larry's emotional betrayal, if you like, or emotional relationship with Mary Steenburgen would have left a bad taste in Ted, in his mouth, I should say, not in him.
Yeah, I get you. Yes, in his mouth. Yeah, not somewhere else.
Well, which is still technically in him, but saying that sounds a lot more than it was intended to.
Very, very sexual, yes. No, but it's obviously wouldn't be as comedic, like I mentioned before. It's much funnier in this scenario.
Well, just take it back. I'm sure they'll fix it for you. Sorry.
Couldn't you take it back? I don't even know where the store is.
Well, it's on Wilshire and 8. I don't understand. You want me to take it back? I just gave you a gift.
You didn't give me a gift. You gave me a defective shirt. It's got a hole in it. That's not a gift. Come on.
I don't own this shirt anymore as I see it. I gave it to you. It's your responsibility.
It's not the point. The point is if you give somebody a gift, it's supposed to be a gift, not
Right,
a
and if you give
problem.
somebody a
This ends up
gift,
being
they're
a
not supposed to be an ingrate. They're supposed to say thank you.
All right. How about I give you a gift and you have to pick it up in Seattle? That's a problem. It's not a gift.
It's not quite the same thing. I'm
It
giving
is
you
the
a
same
gift.
thing, Larry.
In the next scene at Ted's daughter Jill's party, Larry, Jeff, and Cheryl talk about the incident with Ted before he and Jill come over. Ted says that Jeff will be the Lion, which was Jeff's first choice. Cheryl will be Dorothy, and Larry will be the Tin Man that he refuses to do. He doesn't want to be Tin Man. Hates Tin Man. Larry suspects that the change happened because of the shirt issue, which Ted denies. Ted walks off, and Larry calls Ted an asshole in front of Jill, and Jill starts, bawling.
I can understand why Larry would be a bit ticked off. He was recast, and I don't think that was warranted. I think Ted was a bit mean about that. But for Larry to call Ted Jill's father, for Larry to call Ted an asshole in front of Jill, being her dad, is is a bit of a poor decision from Larry. I mean, I think he's warranted in thinking. Ted's being a bit of an asshole in the circumstance, but yeah, to call him out in front of his kid is a bit rough.
Yeah, and she gets really upset.
Yeah.
and Larry's like, "Oh, what have I done?"
He doesn't sort of try and address the situation or, apologize. He's just like, no, doesn't care that he's upset Ted's daughter.
I think he does acknowledge it at least. I think he does see like a crying child. You're right. He doesn't really take action to say sorry or whatever.
Yeah, no,
I think he's aware of it.
Yeah, no, he understands that he's put his foot in it, but he doesn't understand or care enough to try and make up for it. He's just like, oh, I've made this awkward, but that's it. He doesn't go beyond that.
Yeah, very true, very true. And anyway, later on in the party, Jill is hitting a piñata with a stick or a bat, I guess you'd say. What is it, a piñata stick?
Yeah, I guess so. It's like, I think they're usually wooden sticks you would use. Every time I've hit a piñata, it's just been like a broomstick or just like something long and hard.
Yeah, well, piñatas, I guess after this scene, I've been put off going near piñatas, especially with small children. So anyway, Jeff and Cheryl are in costume, but Larry obviously is not in costume. He turns around near the piñata and Jill accidentally hits him in the face with the piñata stick, a pretty brutal smack in the face. This knocks both of his front teeth out and he gets bloodstains on his new favorite shirt. And Larry's like, oh my God, what's going on? And Jill's obviously very horrified.
Yeah, and as much as Larry deserves some sort of comeuppance for calling Ted an arsehole in front of Jill, I don't think two front teeth knocked out is warranted. I think, I do feel sorry for Larry in this situation. I just wanted to make comment as well. I think the costume staff or the special effects staff, if they exist on a show like this, they did a really good job. I don't know how they did it, of making it look like
Larry lost his teeth.
Front teeth. Like you normally.
I know, they look fantastic.
Yeah, it didn't look like he had a false set of teeth on, and I don't know enough about sort of on-screen trickery other than CGI, and I don't imagine they would have used CGI for this. I'm guessing it's some sort of prosthetic or camera trick or something, but they did a really good job.
Yeah, it was fabulous. I actually thought Larry pulled out his front teeth deliberately for the show. Yeah. I was like, maybe, I don't think Larry would stoop that low, but I think they use it's like some kind of prop paint or something that they use, and they paint the teeth black to make it look like they're not there. I think there's some kind of trick. It's like some kind of visual effect or some kind of technique they use.
Yeah, I would imagine that it's a practical trick and maybe they just sort of augmented it to make it look more seamless with maybe a bit of CGI or something. I don't know.
Who knows?
Whatever. Yeah. If you happen to be listening to this and you know about that, tell us about that, because it was just really noticeable about how good it was. And, I was trying to figure it out and I couldn't, so I'd be curious to know.
Yeah, if you're a VFX or a practical effects artist, let us know.
Yeah.
I'd be very curious. Larry is getting fixed up at the dentist later in the day. He thanks the dentist for coming in on a Sunday to do the work. The dentist asks if Larry had a nice trip to the country, and Larry says yes. And the dentist rather says that he had a nice dinner and Larry missed out. Larry is making up a story about going to a relative's house in the country with a pear orchid. And Larry is building up on the lie. Yes, and Larry is building up on the lie by adding more to the story, and the dentist obviously knows how pears work because he's a dentist. He knows about fruit and acidity in the teeth and stuff, and he probably is aware of that, of how like the evolution of pears, because even Larry's like, oh, they're brown pears.
Yep.
And then they're like, shouldn't they be green pears? And Larry's like, no, it's brown.
Yeah, as soon as the dentist questions the color of the pears and Larry's trying to double down on his lie, that's all over for him.
Yeah, but Larry's obviously like, some people when they lie, they add more to the story. Like he just keeps waffling and waffling. So I feel like the dentist probably knew, like once Larry just keeps waffling about pears, he's like, hang on, He's just building, unnecessarily.
I would assume the dentist, and his name's Dr. Gore, by the way.
Dr. Gore, yes.
Yeah, I would assume that maybe at this point before Larry came in, I thought maybe he had a suspicion, but not 100% certain that Larry was lying. But as soon as he started talking about the pairs, I think he was like, no, it's confirmed now. My suspicion is more than that. It's confirmation.
Yeah, you ghosted me. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And also, actually, no, we find out that he tells Larry that Bert was in the office, and he told him that he saw Larry at the shop. So, that too. I think it was a mixture of his intuition, so to speak, as well as Bert kind of spilling the beans on him. And Larry goes under because he's been given anesthetic. And in the next scene, Larry returns home, and his temporary front teeth are a bit longer than his mouth allows, and he looks a bit like a rabbit, a bit like Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, he's got big fake temporary teeth, and
yes, I love that. Yeah. I love it. It gives him a bit of an overbite too.
Yeah, and I understand why Larry would feel a bit humiliated and a bit upset over these big
jumpers,
goofy buck teeth. I don't know whether you only see Dr. Gore for 1 minute, and he barely says anything, so it's hard to gauge whether he'd be the sort of person to give Larry these big teeth as a form of revenge. So I'm undecided about whether it's just a coincidence or whether he had an option to give him smaller teeth and he decided to fuck with him just to get even for being lied to. But I don't know. Sometimes you can tell by a character, you're like, well, based on who they are, he probably did do it as revenge. There's not much to work with on Dr. Gore, so it's hard to tell whether it was just a coincidence or intentional.
Well, I feel like in the previous scene with Dr. Gore, you can actually see when Larry goes under that he's very pissed off. You can really see he's seething. So maybe I think well, Larry tells Cheryl that he thinks it's probably deliberate, and I probably have to agree with him. He did it just to get back at him for lying. And Cheryl is watching Wizard of Oz on the TV. Ted knocks on the front door and apologizes about what happened. He tells Ted to forget about piñata parties as they're too dangerous with the bat. Goes on a little rant about piñatas.
Yeah, Ted, Ted has realized, look, maybe I was a bit mean to Larry by recasting him, and I've come over to smooth it over and make things right because we're going to be investing and working together. Ted has come over in upon reflection and in good faith to sort of bury the hatchet, and all Larry cares about is not that he upset his daughter or that Ted's a bit pissed off about being called an asshole. All he cares about is whether piñata parties are appropriate. It's just typical Larry, completely unaware of the emotional stakes, the emotional energy of a situation, and he rants on about something that is completely unrelated and inappropriate, which is why
it's why we love him. Yes. And Ted, because he feels sorry for Larry, he offers to take the shirt back and exchange it, but Larry says they don't have any more stock as he got the last two. Larry wants to keep the shirt Ted gave back to him, and they start arguing again because you can see Ted, Larry's walking upstairs saying, I've only got at first Larry says, I want the two shirts, and even Ted looks at him like, what the hell? Why do you need two shirts? And Cheryl has to convince him to give Ted the shirt.
Yeah, as usual, Cheryl comes in and just sort of cuts through all the bullshit that Larry says and sets up and just says, just do this simple thing. Stop making this more complicated and weird than it needs to be. Just do the thing.
Yeah. I just love the look on Ted's face. He's just so bewildered and what he's seeing. He's like, what?
I understand buying a second shirt as a gift, but why did you buy a third shirt? And why are you telling me you only got two? Why did you buy 3 shirts and why are you lying about it? Yeah, I can understand why Ted is. He came over there for one thing, and then it turns out that Larry is lying about how many shirts he has. It's unexpected and weird for Ted.
Yeah, Ted was very bewildered.
Yeah, and understandably so.
Larry gives Ted the shirt and places it on a couch in the adjacent living area. They're all watching The Wizard of Oz in a sitting room as Barbara rings the doorbell. Larry says that he'll invest in the restaurant for the same amount as Ted. Barbara returns the picture and apologizes for the delay due to her husband's passing. They walk into the living room, and this is probably my favorite scene in the episode. They walk into the living room where Barbara breaks down after seeing Wizard of Oz. She says that it was her and Chet's favorite film. And she also sees Larry's shirt, the same one as Chet's in the photo. In her grief, she goes up to Larry and hugs him. Makeup smears all over the shirt. Ted and Larry fight to get the other shirt in the other room in case she does the same thing again. And I guess this kind of sets up the frenemy relationship between Ted and Larry.
Yeah, it sets it up nicely because it doesn't put them in direct competition based on hatred, but there is going to be push and pull tension between them, I imagine, through the season. They have to work together as investors if that is the storyline that plays out through the season. So they have to at least try and be civil, but obviously little things are going to come up between them. So I thought they established it well.
Yeah, absolutely. Ted will be the new Richard Lewis, I guess.
Yeah.
Or at least an addition to Richard Lewis.
Yeah.
Anyway, they go to fight with the shirt and they rip it in half in the ensuing struggle. Barbara is still crying and Cheryl's like, what the hell is going on? And in the very last scene, it's only about 20 seconds, Ted throws the shirt, the broken or the ripped shirt, shirt in the same bin as Larry did earlier, and the neighbour yells out to Ted, and Ted gets scared and runs off. And that's the episode.
Yeah, a nice full circle bookend to the opening scene. As I said before, I thought the episode was going to involve at least partially the angry bin owner, but then he's not brought up, he's not talked about, it's not even mentioned by Larry through the episode. But then that final scene bookends it nicely. So a nice little misdirect, and then bringing it right back to where it started.
But I don't feel like Ted had his ass kicked. I feel like the neighbour, like you said, was just in his window and he was yelling at Ted.
Yeah, and look, that guy, like I said, he seems like all bark and no bite at the start. He doesn't even threaten Larry directly. He just says, the next person, I'm going to kick their ass. And I think
which is Ted.
And Ted's like a pretty big dude. Like Ted's pretty tall, pretty confident. I would be a bit intimidated by him, even if I wasn't aware of his fighting capabilities. I wouldn't assume that I can kick his ass unless I was like highly trained or something. And also the fact, it's in the middle of the day on a suburban street. You're beating up someone with a high profile. I mean,
it wouldn't look good.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't beat up people anyway. It's wrong regardless. But I think the guy was obviously smart enough to realize he had enough situational awareness to maybe he just yelled at Ted and then that was it. It was basically a repeat of the opening scene.
He probably didn't even know it was Ted. It was a bit far away, but who knows?
Yeah.
And anyway, that was the episode, my friends. So what we normally do, like we have the last 2 seasons, we rate the episode out of 5 Larrys. So I give this episode, Steve, 3.5 Larrys out of 5. A solid start for the season. What about you?
Yeah, I give this 3. I was thinking 3.5, but I reconsidered and thought 3. This episode does exactly what I expected it to and exactly what it needs to do. It brings us right back into Larry being an inconsiderate and insensitive jerk. He obviously lies all throughout this episode, classic Larry. It sets up what we assume will be the one of the overarching narratives for this season, i.e. the pool of restaurant investors and the tension between Larry and Ted. I think it brought in Ted very well. You already sort of...
It did, yes.
You feel, sometimes when celebrities appear in TV shows, they can kind of feel a bit just sort of crowbarred in there just for the sake of a celebrity appearance. Curb is really good at bringing them in naturally because, it's set in Hollywood and Larry knows these people personally, so it never feels forced. But even for Curb, Ted feels like a natural addition for this season, and I hope he is a at least semi-consistent character. And I'm hoping that the emotional relationship that Larry and Mary had in season 1 is brought back at least, once maybe, as a point of tension between Ted and Larry. Larry's always been very good via Seinfeld or Curb at calling things back and maintaining that continuity. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if that's referenced at least once. And, it brings back, why is Larry's manager blanking on me?
Oh, Jeff.
Jeff, of course. Jeff. It reestablishes all the dynamics that you've come to expect. Larry's insensitive. Cheryl's the voice of reason. She sees through his bullshit and keeps him in line. It introduces some new characters, and it does exactly what it needs to do. And it doesn't feel so, sometimes seasons of shows start to make a bang. They really try and hit the ground running. This feels like just a nice, gentle, soft re-entry into Curb, and and there's a lot there to build on. And I feel like the best is yet to come. So yeah, really good, solid, establishing episode. Nothing amazing, but nothing terrible. So 3 out of 5
for sure. Very good, mate. Now I love how this is fresh for both of us from here on in. So we got plenty of seasons to go. So looking forward to it, mate. Gonna be fun.
No, I'm actually really excited. After watching this episode, I realized how much I've missed Curb Your Enthusiasm. When you do a podcast and you watch a show week in, week out, whether it's Seinfeld or Curb, it can get a bit repetitive. It feels sometimes like a bit of an obligation. But after 4 or 5 months off, it's I'm really, really looking forward to the rest of Curbcast or Curb Your Enthusiasm season 3.
Yeah, me too, mate. But anyway, that was Curbcast season 3, episode 1. Thank you so much for listening. We do appreciate it. And like I said, Steve and I, we're going to have a good time bringing the episodes to you. Right now, this podcast is exclusively on Patreon, but you can sign up if you haven't already. patreon.com/Bidwabask, BIDWBASC. You can listen to season 2 and 3 on there, and you can listen to season 1 for free on our Bidwabask podcast feed. So until then, my name's Ivan.
And I'm Stephen.
And we will catch you next week for episode 2 of Curb Your Enthusiasm's season 3. You take care of yourselves and each other.
And thank you for listening, and we'll catch you all next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening. This podcast is part of Mishmash Media, an independent podcast network. Follow us on social media at Mishmash Media AU or support us on Patreon. All those links are in the show notes.